isolation, the sadness, it seemed on the outside like a music video, like a party, but inside it was just dark. It was like different girls every night, but then alone all day, hungover every day, no money.
John, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, of course. Where are you from?
Originally from Danbury, Connecticut.
So what was it like growing up in Danbury?
For me, it was very copacetic. I talked to a lot of people that have traumas, really rough upbringings. I had both parents in my life, a younger brother, middle class, maybe lower middle class, but nothing really to write home about. Went to church on Sundays. My life was baseball. That was my dream. And a lot of family support, a lot of family in town. So kind of the very basic American dream.
Nice. What was the family dynamic like? Your brothers, sisters?
One younger brother, both parents in my life, and both my parents worked a lot. My mom put herself through school while I was growing up, and my dad drove a truck for 13 hours a day. So,
were your parents pretty present?
Yeah, they were very present. I mean, my dad obviously long days. Sometimes he'd be away for a couple days, but my mom, took us all of our baseball, football games, school, everything.
So it's interesting. I have two older brothers. I'm the youngest of three boys. Mm. And by the time I came around and I was in high school, my parents smartened up. I feel like my oldest brother had the most leeway. What was that like? Did you have a lot of leeway growing up? And then were they strict with your brother? What did that look like?
Mine was the opposite. I think there was leeway and they were still learning. They had me first and they were young. So with the parent aspect, I think even my mom said she wished they waited because they were still growing up themselves. But when it came to leeway, they were strict on me, and my brother was kind of just, he had his freedom, and then he learned from my mistakes what to do, what not to do.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a daughter, and a 5-year-old daughter, just one child. Everything that, she hasn't gone through life yet, but just small things. I'm hyper aware of detail, or I will just over-exaggerate things because I want to make sure I get it right with her. Yeah. But then I realized it wasn't that big of a deal and I was overthinking it. So that's probably the dynamic that, an approach your parents had.
Absolutely.
So what was it like through high school for you? Were you using drugs? Were you drinking? Identity-wise, were you finding yourself during those years?
Yeah, so that's why I really struggled. Coming up, just a great hyper kid, hyperactive, loving, faithful. And right before high school was when I kind of had my first trauma. I had my friend's dad. We were playing paintball. I thought he fell, and he ended up having a massive heart attack and died in front of us. And we were 13. So that was the first time I kind of had trauma. I kind of got away from God. I never prayed again until I got sober. I just had almost a false faith. It was like that God's good, so everything will go good in my eyes, the way I see it, And that was the first time, why would you do this? To my friend, he was right there. To us, to him, his dad was young. And right into high school, freshman, sophomore year, grades started to drop. Anger. My parents said I couldn't go on a sleepover. I put my head through the wall. My brother didn't want to play baseball with me. I ripped my door off the hinges. I think I had a control issue and a little PTSD. And then my freshman year, ruptured my spleen on a trampoline. I got out of the ICU a week later and went right back to ICU because it ended up being mono. My throat closed. So I started to just have these I felt like life was coming for me. And, I was just trying to go to baseball, go to school, and get a D1 scholarship. Fast forward, I tried to keep doing that, and junior, senior year, just things kept happening. I was spiritually not fit, mentally not fit, and I got into alcohol, weed, kind of like your average. I used right away like an addict, not every day, but everyone else would get drunk. John would get belligerent, punch his best friend in the face, sleep with his best friend's girlfriend. And there were signs early on this isn't normal. Everyone stopped smoking weed after the party. I'd go home and smoke it out of a Coke can in my garage. So it was the signs were there pretty early on.
Yeah, so you were isolating when using and drinking. That's usually, at least in my story and very common meetings I go to, once you start isolating and using and drinking by yourself, or you hear it all the time, people are like, all right, I'm going to go home for the night. And me being the addict and alcoholic, I'm like, wait, where's everyone going? It's 3 a.m. We're still going until the wee hours of the morning. So when did you realize that alcohol and drugs were potentially a problem for you?
I mean, right away. And I think alcohol was the problem and weed because I knew it works for me. I'm always big on that. Like, that gave me that spiritual release. It just ruined my entire life. And alcohol and weed, you can't really control yourself. So, like I said, it would just be either I got way too high, so I couldn't even be in public, or if I was drunk, I just caused a scene. So fast forward to like senior year, I get introduced to opiates, OxyContin. I get into that, and right away it gave me that same high, but I could control myself. I could isolate. I wasn't causing a scene, you know. I'm high as hell, but I'm not punching my friends in the face. But then I got into, you know, trafficking it from the city, and instantly I was just around people I shouldn't have been around, and that just snowballed, you know, right into college years.
So how did you get introduced to painkillers? Through a friend or an injury?
Through a friend. I actually got injured. I didn't get it, but my best friend, who has now passed away to overdose, he got injured too. He got him, and then it was just that rise. Like we were talking before this, that like that was like the epidemic of opiates, that everyone had them, everyone was looking for them, selling them. So I raided my parents' cabinet and tried it once. I was just sitting at a table, you know. And before that, I hated drugs. Idolized Derek Jeter because he was clean cut, you know, more than his play. So that it changes you so much, you know. I was hating on addicts and drug dealers 3 years before, and I was in the room with the biggest drug dealers 3 years later, and they were like, do a line. And I was like, no, and there was no alcohol or weed, so I was like, you know what, fine, I'll try it. And I did that line of 80, and it took me approximately like 10 years to get off that.
So I did OxyContin 80 milligram as well. Those were just different. Yeah. And I chased that high for a very long time. And it's crazy because I noticed that I was, when I got sober almost 7 years ago, about 6.5 years ago, I was an undiagnosed case of ADHD. So when I would do a painkiller, it gave me the opposite effect. So when someone would do OxyContin who is not an addict or alcoholic or doesn't have ADHD, they're like, how could you get addicted to that? I would just pass out on my couch. It would make me groggy. No, I had the complete opposite effect. You give me an Oxy 80, I will clean your entire house and then talk to everyone on the phone and take over the world.
Yeah.
Did you have that same experience?
Yeah, so it's funny, I'm identical. I was diagnosed at young as strong, really bad ADHD, and they gave me Adderall or one of those, and I just hated the way it made me feel. So when I got onto 80s, it was the same thing. I was actually like, I mean, I ruined my money and stuff, but like business-wise, I was succeeding like crazy. I ran a call center as a drug addict of 1,500 people with no degree, and I like Wolf of Wall Street the whole place. But it helped me concentrate. It did have positive benefits. It was just ruining my life on the outside.
Yeah. So how did you get into trafficking pills from New York City to Connecticut?
Basically, so I started, the grade I was in had a lot of kids in my grade. And then when we were freshmen, like 4 years above us, all their brothers were seniors, and then their friends. And so they were in this game way before, 4 years before us. They're using, selling. And it started with just like, hey, once we started using, we'd be around them. And they'd be like, hey, we'll pay you and give you some free stuff if you go to Queens or the Bronx or whatever and pick up this stuff. And we were like, all right. And then from that point, you know, we started to realize, wait, we're paying 60 or 70 a pill. They're getting them for 20. Like, why don't we just do this and support our habit? So essentially, you know, we got our own money up and we started to grab our own pills and bring them back here. You know, something definitely not proud about. And I speak to the youth a lot about now because I think rap music, it's idolized and whatnot. And, you know, I got to live with, like, did anyone die that I don't know about? How many lives, and even if they lived, how many lives did I ruin? You know, so that's why I take giving back so serious today, because it's kind of my amends to the community. And that just grew from there, you know. I moved to West Virginia and I got into trafficking there to Pittsburgh, and it just became a way to support my habit, even though I hated doing it.
Yeah. A way to support. So I like to call myself a drug dealer, but I was not a drug dealer at all. I thought I was in my head. I would pick up maybe about 100 pills, like 100 perks or whatever. Yeah. And then I would sell 50 of them, and then I'd have 50 for myself, and it would cover my 50 as well. So I would break even, but then I would run through those 50 in a couple days, maybe a week, if that. And I would start buying them back from everyone that I sold them to. And then, within a week, I'm going and re-upping and getting, doing cash advances on my credit card and stuff like that. Yeah. So
I was there too. It sounds successful, but it wasn't. Early on, I think we hit gold at first because we weren't really big addicts. We were doing half a pill. But as addiction went, it just ruined everything. And halfway through addiction, there was just none of that because I owed people money. I would do everything,
Yeah.
It takes over.
Oh, yeah. I'm very familiar.
Yeah, you get it. Yeah.
So walk us through maybe your last month of drinking and drugging and how you found sobriety, essentially.
Absolutely. So I went to multiple rehabs, probably 5 or 6. Just never really applied the program when I got home. A couple of them were state-run facilities that were trash. They just let us sit there. They didn't really educate us or get us in a deep therapy. So in 2018, I went to my last rehab. Got off of opiates for the last time. Got introduced to 12 steps. Did that for 7 months. My whole life got better. And then thought I was cured. Stopped doing it like a lot of people do. And found alcohol and cocaine because I was like, oh, I'm an opiate addict. I'm not really an alcoholic. And forgot completely how my 18-year-old self went with alcohol. Just wiped that from my memory. So I went and reminded myself for a year, moved to Yonkers. Drank and did cocaine for a year straight every night, working at Rory Dolan's, a big bar down there. And it just, the isolation, the sadness, it seemed on the outside like a music video, like a party, but inside it was just dark. It was different girls every night, but then alone all day, hungover every day, no money, no sleep. And I hit a wall and I knew it worked. I said, I got to go back to 12 steps. It worked for those 7 months. The only problem is I didn't do the 12th step and keep helping people. So it was kind of a learning lesson. And I hit a wall. I drank all night, just made a fool of myself, decided to wake up and go to a hotel. And I said, I'm just going to drink the day away. If I live, tomorrow's my sobriety date. If I don't, I don't. I hate doing this. And I didn't want to die. But, I relate to addicts when they just don't know how to get out of the cycle. And I woke up next day. And said, today's my sobriety date. It was March 3rd, 2019.
That's amazing. Congrats, man.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So you are 5.5 years sober?
Yep.
Amazing.
Thank you.
That's awesome. And through COVID, too.
Yeah, that was 3 days after my 1 year.
Wow.
So I kind of felt again, my freshman year of high school, hold up. I had a decade to get sober. I get sober, and now life's coming for me again. But then God, I have a sponsor in my life. It's you're not that important, man. The whole world, half the world's dying. You decide to get sober. Congratulations. So humbled me.
I have a number of friends. I was in New York City when COVID hit. And I have a number of friends. You couldn't go to any meetings. Everything was virtual. And I know a number of people with double-digit years of sobriety who went out.
Yeah.
Who went back out. So I commend you. I commend you on staying sober, and that helps me, right? So you're staying sober. You are a power of example to me and to other alcoholics and addicts. So that's amazing, man. That's really amazing.
You as well.
It's crazy because, and I want to backtrack a little bit because I think this is very important. When I got sober this time, I had to stop the mood and mind-altering substances, such i.e. pills, all opiates. Mm-hmm. I had to stop smoking weed. I had to stop drinking. And then whatever other extracurricular activities I was doing, I had to stop all of that. And I learned that those were all symptoms. Listen, painkillers were my problem. That was in my addiction. Drinking could easily become my problem. I will drink alcoholically. If I say, okay, well, I'm stopping pills, I'm going to stop smoking weed. Drugs I'm not going to do, I'm just going to drink. Dude, I've tried it a million times. And what would happen is I'd drink one night and I'd have a good night. A couple beers, I'd get away with it. I'd feel, good. And then the next day I would have, maybe 6 beers. And then within a couple days, I'm blacking out and filling that void to get out of myself because of the deep-rooted insecurities that I have and that I have to mask. You talked about coming in with the willingness, right? You went to a 12-step program, you went to meetings, but you didn't do the steps. I feel like it is very, the biggest step is humbling yourself, admitting you have some kind of problem, having that awareness, going into meetings, asking for help. What was it for you that after those 7 months where you went to meetings that kind of coasted you and the thinking that enabled you then to go and start drinking again?
I think it was really like the pressures of life. So, and thinking you're cured. You know, AA, it's a tough thing because it's so successful in NA and all these 12 steps, but it's so much to absorb. You know, you show up and your mind's fog, and then they're trying to tell you like higher power, do this, do that. So it was a lot to absorb, and I did, but as time went on, I felt better, so I thought I was better. Thought it was like cured of cancer. And then I was 28, I had no wife, no money, no career, no degree. So I kind of felt behind the 8 ball. So once I realized I felt good in my sobriety, I was like, now I can attack life. So I started like chasing girls, working 3 jobs to save money, trying to figure out a profession. And it was that disconnect of, you know, stop going to meetings, which is where I relate to remind myself I am an addict. Because even now, I'm sure, I mean, you have more time than me, you can relate. I say to people all the time, staying sober is a lot easier, but simple is hard. You know, it becomes so easy that's like, I got to remember just to hit a couple meetings. I got to remember where I came from. It's hard to remember 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago. So, you know, you start to think, I'm not that bad. And then it's like, I'm in a meeting and someone's on day 1 talking about, oh, I got arrested 3 times. And then it's like, oh, I could relate. I need to stay sober. Like, so I got away from hearing that, and I got away from service. And sobriety wasn't first anymore. You know?
I love that you mentioned service. Yeah. Service for me keeps me grounded. Keeps me humble. When I am humble and grateful and grounded, I don't get ahead of myself. You talked about your life improved in those 7 months, right? You were ready then to really start your life and work-wise, chase girls. You know, they say like no major changes in the first year of your sobriety. And that includes for me chasing girls. And it sounds like your life got better, and that happens very often in sobriety. People's life. Listen, you go and start working on yourself and get sober, get clean, your life gets better. That's what happens. And people tend to take their will back once their life starts getting better. And I'm saying that from my experience because I've done it. I mean, the number of times I went in, even after like 2 months, I'd be like, oh my God, my life is so much better. That was a mistake. I over-exaggerated about having a problem. I'm good. And then I would start drinking. And then within a couple of weeks, I'm back to using painkillers again. And my life is 10 times worse than it was before I started that first time. So I really like that you mentioned that. So this time sober, so you had the 7 months, you went back out, relapsed for about a year, came back in 2019. You're sober 5.5 years today. What was different this time to help you get past 7 months?
I think it was a service. You know, I look at things analytically. So I was like, where did I fail? And it was a 12 step. It was helping others. I made it perfectly through 7 months. Basically my whole life got better. And that's when I stopped. So I made it a serious part that like, just do the same thing, but this time it's going to be 12 step for the rest of my life. And I hit a lot of obstacles in my first 2 years of sobriety. COVID hit, like we talked about. So I struggled. I mean, I struggled at first, and my sponsor was like, well, chair a couple Zoom meetings. You know, we used to do parking lot meetings. Like, so I found service that way because I couldn't be in detox and rehab speaking. I couldn't be sponsoring in person. And then halfway through COVID, in 1 week, you know, my best friend I grew up with overdosed. My last roommate that I became close friends with in my last rehab overdosed. And the kid I grew up with took his own life after a couple years of sobriety. And I was like riddled with grief. So I reached out to my sponsor. And again, I was like, I feel that darkness coming. Like a drink is the answer soon. And he was like, help others, man, find a way. And I went on a run and prayed on it, and it just hit me. And it was like, I have social media. I should start, you know, everyone's dying in this Connecticut area from overdoses. Why don't I just start being the one to be like, it's all right to be an addict, it's all right to ask for help. And it took off, and we called it Get Lifted. It's a little spiritually, mentally, physically formula I have from like AA, self-help books. And it's called a spiritual bank account. We get into that. But that took off. And then, you know, my family was really proud of me. And then in 2021, and the reason I tell this is because everyone's like, how'd you get through everything you went through? And it was all through service. Getting out of myself and helping people has gotten me through incredible pain. So in 2021, my brother started to struggle, successful, not an addict like me really, like no real bottoms, like nice car, nice high-rise apartment, did HVAC for NYU, and but he was drinking to, I think, cope with some mental stuff, and he decided to take his own life fighting with his girlfriend right after I had 2 years sobriety. So, I found myself again just like, damn, what are we going to do here? And took a little time for me, and then it was about service. So I kept posting. Then I started posting on TikTok, which kind of blew up a little. And everyone said write a book, and that was my big service. I dedicated the book, Life on Life's Terms, to him. And, those things have helped me. There's a way to, like, grieve and process life while you're helping others, and make sure your problems not seem as big. So really, it was service for me of just helping other people and, just like you are today. That's why we're here, sharing the message to others. And it's hard to go grab a Jack and Coke after this when you're, in the process of helping people. So
I want to highlight in your story, you had 4 significant traumatic events take place in your sobriety, specifically during COVID.
Yeah.
One of which was your brother taking his own life. I am so sorry for, the losses.
Appreciate it.
But for the listener, you got through it sober. And you got through it sober by helping other people. So I commend you. It can be done. If anyone's listening out there, it can be done. And look, I went through a divorce. It is to the magnitude, from a magnitude perspective, it does not compare to what happened to your brother, your friends. However, for me, it was a traumatic event, right? And I didn't think I was going to get through that, and I did. And getting through traumatic events is possible in sobriety. And it's honestly no coincidence that you were helping others on your A game, going to meetings, like you're actively using all of the tools that were given to you. And I wanted to highlight that because a lot of people get away from helping others. A lot of people get away from, using their tools that they know and they have, right? Because as an addict, and an alcohol, I'm everything. I tend to forget. And I'm like, no, like I got this. Or you sit in that pity if something, terrifying happens. You never know. Someone could just pass away out of nowhere when your guard is down and you are not helping others and you are not spiritually fit and you are not, actively working a good program. So I commend you on that. So where are you at today? What are you up to? And definitely, give a plug to your book, man.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. So this was dedicated to your brother.
Dedicated to my brother. It's Life on Life's Terms. It actually went #1 new release on Amazon December 2023.
Congratulations.
All genres, sobriety, addiction, mental health, alcoholism. And I dedicated it to my brother and all my friends I lost to addiction. And I think that was a big part. It was to show people, like, doesn't matter what you go through, because even, losing your brother sounds terrible. I felt like I'm the only one in the world. I go to a AA meeting, raise my hand, or NA meeting, whatever, and like 4 other people, like, I lost my brother. And right away, it's the whole 12-step motto. It's like, I'm not alone. Other people have made it through this. So I felt like God, even when I lost my first 3 friends, he kind of was like, all right, you're going to be the example, that you can make it through anything. And so now I have the Get Lifted podcast. It's kind of like a hobby. We're not huge. We're getting there. But, I do that on the side for fun. I have Recovery John on TikTok and, get just my story. And we also highlight other people's stories. So we put up their before and after, a little bit snippet of their story, and we celebrate their milestones. And it just spreads hope to other people. It's amazing to see, because it was just me first in my stories. And I started putting others, and it's sick to watch like 1,000 comments of people like, congratulations, you inspired me. Of like me posting it, but it's other people helping each other. It's so cool. And, book signings. I do here in town. I'm a board member for a juvenile review board. So we take juveniles that got arrested. Usually they have drugs on them, but they could be arrested for anything. And we put them in workshops that I run or other people run, and we pay for their basketball team if their parents don't have the money, and we try to rehab their life. You know, why are you getting arrested with a knife and a knife and weed in school at 17? Something's not really going right. And so I help them. I do keynote speeches, and I use my platform to help so many people reach out for help via social media, that I try to assist people, whether it's finding a meeting. I've also set up a network of rehabs and treatment centers and detoxes that I believe in, that I've vetted, so I can put them with my network and say, you know, they'll go through your insurance and see what's best for your option in life. And other than that, just living life, you know, grateful, you know, trying to make my brother proud, trying to help people, and things are coming together, so it's awesome.
You are definitely making your brother proud.
Thank you.
It's all of these things you're doing. I say this a lot on my podcast. They're self-esteemable acts. Mm-hmm. And I personally, it keeps me humble when I'm helping others, and my ego can get very big. So I constantly have to practice humility. I constantly have to be brought back down to earth. And for a very long time, and the reason I have an ego is because I can be insecure. I was insecure for so long, and you know, I've built myself back up, but sometimes the mind goes, or I'll go on social media and I'll start looking at what other people have. What are other people doing? Everyone's doing these huge things. What the fuck am I doing? I'm a loser. I'm not good enough. I'm never going to get there. And for me, when I partake in self-esteemable acts and help others, and you know, like you're doing with the book, and vetting rehabs for people, and speaking, just, you know, whether it's companies or helping, you know, 17-year-olds who just got out of prison or were arrested for drugs, whatever it may be, that helps build the self-esteem, so that when you look at yourself in the mirror, all of these good things that you're doing, that makes up who you really are. And I got away from myself, from who I really was, for a long time. Growing up, I was a great kid. I was very helpful to everyone. I was loving to everyone, you know, friends. And then I started doing drugs, and some of the shit that I did to get drugs, that just go along with the lifestyle, made me feel like a piece of shit for a very long time and created that insecurity. So, if you could go back to the John who was struggling even before the first stint in sobriety, and give him a piece of advice, what would it be?
Probably be ask for help. I think my biggest thing was I didn't want to worry my family. I didn't want to be judged. And I deal with it all the time with thousands of people reaching out for help. Their biggest thing is like, same thing. I don't want to worry my parents or my wife or husband, or I don't want that stigma of addiction the rest of my life. So, you know, I was afraid to do it. And as you could see from my story today, it is probably the one thing people are most proud of me of. So I try to explain my story to people that it was my biggest fear and secret. And now, as you could tell, social media, book, us sitting here, you know, just like you, it's what I wear on my shoulder and what people are actually most proud of me for. So, you know, wear it as a badge of honor. People don't hide that they have cancer, you know.
So there was a lot of fear for me as well.
Yeah.
Asking for help. I was ashamed. And I didn't want everyone to know that I was an alcoholic or an addict, or I was struggling, because I am Kevin Lanning. I was nobody. There was just this fear in my head. And it's funny because, just like yourself, once I started talking about my story and started being open about it and asking for help, all of these people came forward, helped me. And then other people as well came to me and said, dude, that's amazing, respected me for it. And then others asked for help because they had their own shit they were going through, and I was able to help someone else. So I think that's a great piece of advice, even for the listener who is struggling. And yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you driving out and coming on. Congratulations with the book, the podcast. You got a lot going on, man. You're a busy dude.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, bud.